Long before FEDD Day arrived and after we came up with our awesome group name, we, the Planetary Defense Council, began the engineering design cycle. First, we defined the problem. This was to design and create a computer game that is creative, fun to play, and teaches users an engineering topic. The game must keep users entertained for a minimum of 5 minutes and require the user to interact once every 10 seconds. Step number 2 was the search for solutions. We knew we were required to build our game using Kodu, Scratch, or GameMaker, so we brainstormed assorted game types that would be possible using the different softwares. Examples include a Minecraft-like game with an interactive story in GameMaker, a simple basketball game in Scratch, or a maze in Kodu. The third step in the cycle was to narrow and select. Our group decided on Kodu because it is user-friendly and has great graphics. The idea of a maze appealed to us because it would require the user to play for an extended amount of time. To make it educational, we added multiple choice questions that must be answered to score points. Sticking with our celestial theme, we chose questions that teach elementary aerospace engineering. During the build, test, and check stages, we encountered 3 design challenges that had to be addressed. The first was that Kodu has a maximum amount of matter that can be added to the game. We then decided to make the walls of our maze short, which saves mass and prevents the player from getting lost and frustrated. The second issue we faced was that the game was rather boring. Our group fixed this by adding enemy robots that you must fight as you go through the maze. The final and greatest challenge we faced was the difficulty of putting multiple choice questions into a maze. However, through some complicated and clever programming, we were successful in the end. On FEDD Day, we had the only 3-dimensional game and it was enjoyed by everyone that played it. We came in 9th overall, but we are still very proud of the game that we created.
If I had to do it all over again, I would try to test my project more, especially with the educational computer game where you have to program everything. The smallest mistake can make the biggest difference.
If I had to do it differently, I would use Kodu design a more complicated game with plots. In the process of playing the game, kids can think a lot to discover some principles and some interesting things in the universe, not just answering some questions in the maze. Because one of the advantages of the Kodu is that of this software is that we can create some more beautiful scenery in the game. So we can use that to create a more complicated game, not just a single maze.
If I were to do this whole project all over again, I would try to make the game a little bit harder. We were really worried about making the game too hard for little kids and getting them disheveled. We didn't want them getting down on themselves, and we didn't want to turn them away from engineering. And so, in my opinion, the hardest part was finding the perfect degree of difficulty for the game. And so in hindsight, I think it would have been better if we had tried to find some kids that were the age range that we were going to make the game for and had them test our prototypes to see if it was too easy or too difficult for them to complete.
If I had to do the same project, my concentration would be on trying to get the attention of children by adding more characters in the game, because there are a lot of characters and children get really bored while they play with the questions. But if you had a lot of characters, they'll try to figure out the game, and the game will be more fun, and they will learn at the same time.
My advice to next year's freshmen would be to avoid assuming that your project will work and actually test it over and over again so that you're not embarrassed on FEDD Day. For the design cycle to be repeatable, you have to effectively test and check so that you can define new problems that you can then address.
My best advice to future E101 students would be try to meet up with your teammates as much as possible during the entire span of your project. It's really hard to convey all of your thoughts and ideas through text or email and GroupMe messages, and it's very easy for you and your teammates to get confused with what everyone's trying to say or what everyone's meaning was behind their messages. So it's really important that you try to meet up face to face as much as possible. And also, it's okay if you don't agree with everything that your teammates say. It's okay if one of their ideas you don't think is a great idea or you think it could be better. As long as you're just respectful of everyone's idea, and if you're respectful of everybody and you just talk about it, it'll all work out.
communicate often with your teammates before you started designing about this game. You should decide which tools that you should use. That is very important because like game making software, sometimes softwares which are attractive may have some limits.
For next year, E101 students, my advice is just try to gather up with your group. I mean, I think one of my teammates said it before. I mean, you can have a lot of complications over the decisions that you're gonna come up to. So what you want to do is meet every week. I mean, if you want, you can meet like once in 2 days. That would be really good. But once in a week is enough, and try to do that because if there's a complication, you don't want to find it out on the FEDD day.